Here now with more Fox News contributors. We have Nicole Parker, Paul Mauro with us. Nicole, senseless shooting, no rhyme or reason that we can put together at this point. It's too early. Our prayers obviously go out to the family of this officer, similarly to the other 4 civilians that were killed here. Thoughts on what we can put together at this point?
Obviously, it's very soon to put much together, but I'm just going to go through a few thoughts that I have as an investigator. The subject is allegedly from Las Vegas, deceased at this point, apparently a suicide. But I would want to know everything about their travel. When did they come to New York? What were their travel patterns? Who booked those flights? Was there surveillance, video surveillance that they picked up that showed him casing the building? Who does he know in the building? Where does he work? Does he know someone on one of those floors? Obviously, to me, it appears to be a targeted act of violence. But again, there are many things that investigators do not know. But now that we do have a subject named, the FBI and other law enforcement are putting together a profile. Everything about their social media. Was there leakage that indicated that they intended to do this? Were there things where they were dissatisfied in their life? What was their job like? What was their personal life? Were there financial struggles? Sean, we are seeing random acts of violence in our country on a nonstop basis. We have shootings on an hourly basis, it seems, these days. It is disgusting, it is wrong, it is despicable, and we should not have to live in fear. But you know what? I commend this NYPD officer. Thank you to her. She paid the ultimate sacrifice today, and my prayer goes out to the 4 others and any others. Right now, the number is obviously not going to be confirmed. But these are people that did everything that they could, I'm sure, to save their own life, but to protect others. And I saw the images of those in the office. I believe it was Blackstone or another office. And they took the furniture, the file cabinets, everything that they could, and they put it up against the door. And that is exactly what we are trained to do. In law enforcement, we train civilians and officers. Civilians, you run, you hide, and you fight. And that is exactly what it appeared that they did.
And I think, Paul, that Nicole is right on the money when she says that this looked like a targeted attack. It doesn't seem random to me. In this building, the confirmed companies are Blackstone. The NFL was in there. KPMG, Rudin Management Company, Bank of America were all in there. It doesn't seem like this one building was randomly chosen. The questions that Nicole asked, I think, are spot on. What else would you be asking? Is there anything you can glean from the companies that we know had offices in this building?
Well, the only thing I would add is that in addition to choosing a particular building in the middle of a very target-rich environment here in Midtown Manhattan, he chose a particular floor, apparently. And so, you know, it's a little bit unclear. You know, it's the 33rd floor, reportedly, and so he would have taken the elevator. He's not walking up 33 floors. So he got on that elevator, he pressed 33 for a reason. And as I was saying earlier, if in fact there was a specific target there, as in a person, well, that person likely knows him, knows who he is, unless unfortunately that person is deceased. So they're certainly going to be looking at why did he shoot, who he shot, was he looking for a specific person, which could answer all of this out. Is the person he was looking for perhaps among the wounded? And that goes to the idea that a scene like this is very, very chaotic. So if you're running it, and they're going to have somebody chief level running this thing, you're going to have people at the hospital with the wounded. Are they in a position to be debriefed? Can you talk to them? Did he say anything while shooting? Do you know him? Had you seen him before? Had he applied for a job? Because the reporting I got is that he wasn't currently employed there. So these are the kinds of things that I think you're going to be gleaning as you work backwards from where he did it, how he did it, but the why is what everybody wants to know. And, you know, that's not an irrelevant factor. We often say when we're talking about trials as lawyers, well, you know, motive doesn't matter. You don't need motive for a conviction. But here, you want motive because you got to see, is he part of a group? Is there another piece out there that may continue to do whatever he did? Is the car booby-trapped? By now, they likely have cleared it. Is his home booby-trapped? Did he have some sort of political edge? Right now, the why is a very salient question, and that's something they're pulling at hard.
Yeah, let me go back to you, Nicole, on this issue of, well, first of all, what an odd scene of anybody in Midtown Manhattan in New York City, where it is nearly impossible to get a pistol carry permit, concealed carry permit, which I did have when I did live in New York. For the city, it is nearly impossible to get one of those. I can tell you that. And to watch somebody walking through with a long rifle like this through the streets of New York is the strangest thing. The fact that nobody saw that is even more odd, knowing how congested the area is. Thoughts?
First of all, this person had no shame in what they were doing. Okay, I've seen a lot of mass shootings and behavior that leads up to it. A lot of times they'll hide the gun, they'll put it in a gun case, they'll put it in something. This guy's walking around with a rifle in the middle of Manhattan. And again, we don't know that other people hadn't seen it, hadn't called the police on him. We don't know that yet, but he had not been approached yet by law enforcement. We'll just leave it at that. And so, yeah, this is not something that you see every day in New York City. New York is known to have very tight gun laws, but as I have always said in my job, criminals that are set out to kill people, they don't care about gun laws. Okay, they have no respect for laws. If they're willing to shoot someone and kill someone, they do not care. And so this person is so brazen. He actually wants to be seen. Yes, he looks a little low key, a little muted. Maybe, you know, the black blazer, it appears to be black pants, white shirt, carrying around a rifle in Manhattan, you know, sunglasses, but not a very, you know, he definitely wanted to be seen. He wanted this moment to be known. And again, going in and just taking out the security officer. He had to have known that there were a number of people that were going to see him. This was going to be picked up on video surveillance. Nothing was going to stop him. But again, going back, I think I love to appear with Paul because as investigators, his NYPD experience, FBI experience, it is so important to think about how these investigators are piecing this together. It is so sad and tragic. But right now, law enforcement, they're going through the line of questioning. What do we need to do to solve this case? Who is this person and why was he here? So what was the precipitating stressor, Sean? What was it that caused this man to say, today is the day, around 6:30 p.m., I'm going to go into Midtown Manhattan and I'm going to do this? And again, the fact that we believe that he had a concealed weapons permit from Las Vegas, that says a lot. He had to travel. And we've seen a pattern in New York now. Like we said, the United Healthcare shooting with the CEO. That was someone that was, you know, they were going to go in, they were going to commit this crime, and nothing was going to stop him. So again, he does not appear to be tacked out, in my opinion, and law enforcement tacked out. He didn't appear to really be tacked out. I don't see a ballistic vest underneath that. We can't see that at this point. But did he have suicidal ideation? Had he manifested any sort of suicidal, you know, ideation prior to this? Were there people around him that knew him? The moment that he's been identified, law enforcement, FBI, NYPD, locals in wherever jurisdiction he comes from, they're, again, pulling up the full profile, talking to family members, friends, looking at medical records, looking at financial situations. His work situation, very, very important and crucial to look at right now. But again, it's mind-boggling to me that people have so much nerve to do something like this in Midtown Manhattan. But Sean, this is not the first time that we've seen this. Like, this is happening all too frequently in our country.
You know, Paul, I do have a fairly large gun collection, and the modifications that are needed in New York State for a lot of weapons to conform to their laws, they're pretty extensive. He's not from New York. The question is, did he get the weapon in New York? How long has he been in New York? Did he have such a rifle with modifications as prescribed by laws in New York? These are questions I'd like to know. Did he somehow drive this to New York? Did he fly to New York? I'd like to know the answer to all those questions.
Yeah, I suspect the police have those answers already in terms of how he got here, because you can go into various computer systems to ascertain if there was a flight under his name, and his name is out there now. It's starting to hit online and in the media. So they're going to be able to ascertain, okay, has he bought a ticket recently? That means they're going to get to his credit cards. They're going to, you have to give good ID. These days you have to use the real ID, actually, to even get on a domestic flight. So if he took a flight, they'll know that. And if he rented a car at the airport, obviously they'll know that. If he drove, they're going to probably know that as well. These days, almost all cars are rolling computers. They know how to do this. The auto crime guys will come in, they'll rip the car, they'll download the computer, they'll get the computer's travel. Most of them have GPSs and all kinds of things in them. The Garmin is built in and all that stuff. So the cops, I suspect, NYPD at the presser that's upcoming, they may not say it, they may not put it all out, but there's a very good chance that they can give us his travel log. As far as the gun goes, well, you know what? They have the gun. And I can tell you right now, they're going to be accessing all those systems. You pull in the ATF, and you're going to be able to do a good trace on that gun to ascertain where it was bought, how it was bought. And as far as it being difficult to buy in New York, it's harder than ever in New York City. I shouldn't say than ever, because it's starting to change because of the Supreme Court decision. But it is very hard, I should say, to buy guns in New York City. But if you leave New York City and you go, let's say, upstate New York, it becomes a lot easier. It's big hunting territory. Now, the modifications he did, there's always a way around these things. You know it and I know it, Sean. So we'll just have to wait and see how he did it. The one thing I would pull from the gun, though, just intuitively, is the fact that, look, he went in without expecting to get out. If he was looking to do something clandestine, surreptitious, not draw a lot of attention, you use a handgun, right? You take the handgun, you stuff it in your pocket, and you can get up, to the 33rd floor without a lot of people seeing you. This tells me, with a weapon like that, he was ready to shoot it out with whoever came along if he had to. So this does look to me like a suicide mission. It looks to me like he went in ready to inflict maximum damage on whatever his target set was, and he did not expect to be leaving that building.
Yeah. All right, Nicole Parker, Paul Mauro, please stay with us.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.